The morning after is the most honest moment in any early relationship. And most women are completely misreading it. Not because they're not paying attention, but because nobody has ever taught them what to actually look for. You've been watching for the wrong things. You've been waiting for him to say something big, something definitive, some clear signal that tells you where you stand. And while you've been waiting for the words, the real answers have been playing out right in front of you, in the smallest, most ordinary moments of that morning. Does he linger or does he rush? Does he look at you or look for his keys? Does he make you coffee or make an excuse? Does he kiss you goodbye like it means something? Or does it feel like a handshake from a stranger? Most people never realize that the morning after is a man's most unguarded state. The chemistry of the night before has settled. The social performance has quieted. And what's left, how he moves through that morning with you, is the closest thing to raw truth you are ever going to get about where you actually stand. If you've ever woken up next to someone and felt that quiet, uncertain dread, wondering, hoping, but not knowing, this video is for you. By the end of this, you will have a clear, confident framework for reading exactly what a man's morning after behavior tells you about his feelings. No more guessing, no more spiral, just clarity. Stay with me. Let me be honest with you about something first, because I think before we talk about what to look for, we need to talk about why this is so hard. You've been trying so hard to figure this out. You've replayed the conversation. You've analyzed every text in the group chat with your friends. You've gone back over the evening in your head looking for clues. And still, you're not sure. You genuinely cannot tell if what happened meant to him what it meant to you. And that uncertainty, that quiet nagging, I don't know where I stand feeling, it is exhausting. It is one of the most emotionally draining experiences a person can have. And it's made worse by the fact that you feel like you should know. Like you should be able to read a person you've been this intimate with. But here's the thing, intimacy doesn't automatically produce clarity. Sometimes it actually creates more confusion. Because in the hours and days after, you're more emotionally invested than you were before, and more afraid of the answer than you were before. So you read into everything. And you read out of everything. You convince yourself of the best case and then immediately talk yourself back into the worst case. And the common mistake, the one I see again and again with the women I've worked with, is that they're looking for certainty in things that were designed to be ambiguous. The what are we conversation, the Instagram like, the slightly longer than usual hug at the door, all of those things are coated in performance. They can be manufactured. A man who isn't serious about you can produce all of those things if he chooses to. But the morning after, that's harder to fake. Because that's not a moment he prepared for. That's not a scripted part of the courtship. That's just life. Ordinary, unguarded, real. And how a man shows up in it tells you everything. So let's get into it. 8 things, 8 behaviors. And by the time we reach the last one, you're going to see that morning with completely different eyes. Let's start with the most fundamental signal of all, and also the most misunderstood one. Because when we talk about a man who stays, most women picture him physically staying the night, already in bed, already there. But that's not what I mean. What I mean goes much deeper than geography. Staying present means his attention is still on you. It means he wakes up and his first move is toward you, not toward his phone, not toward his clothes, not toward constructing an exit strategy. It means there is no sudden shift in his energy the moment morning comes. He didn't check out the minute the clock hit 6 a.m. He is still there, in his attention, in his warmth, in his interest in you as a person, as much as he was the night before. Men who treat women as purely physical encounters have a very specific energy shift that happens in the morning. There's a subtle, sometimes not so subtle, withdrawal, a kind of internal door that quietly closes. They become distracted. They check their phone a lot. The conversation becomes transactional. They stop making eye contact the way they were the night before. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. But it is unmistakable when you know what you're looking for. Contrast that with a man who remains present. He asks you how you slept. He reaches over. He looks at you like the light is still good, like the evening hasn't expired, like he's genuinely pleased to wake up in a world that still contains you in it. That is not a man performing. A man who has gotten what he wanted and wants to leave does not maintain that level of engaged warmth the next morning. It costs too much social energy for someone who isn't invested. Melissa had a habit of excusing the morning after disappearing act by telling herself he's just not a morning person. But the third time she spent the night with someone who went from warm and engaged to distant and distracted the moment the sun came up, she stopped making excuses and started paying attention. The next man she dated, the one she later married, woke up the first morning they spent together, looked at her and said, "Please don't go anywhere. I'll make us breakfast." He wasn't performing romance. He simply didn't want the evening to end. The difference was unmistakable. The mini insight. A man who has nothing to gain from the next morning, but stays warm anyway. He's not staying for the night. He's staying for you. But here's where it gets interesting. This one sounds so simple that it almost feels silly to include it. But don't let the simplicity fool you, because this behavior is one of the most revealing things a man can do the morning after, and it almost never gets the credit it deserves. When a man who has spent the night with you gets up and without being asked makes you coffee or makes you toast or hands you a glass of water or says, "What do you want for breakfast? I'll sort it," he is communicating something that goes far beyond domestic hospitality. He is communicating that your comfort is part of his morning, that you are not an inconvenience to be managed around, that the version of his morning that includes you being taken care of is preferable to him than the version where he slips out quickly and gets on with his day. Think about what this requires. It requires him to orient his attention outward, toward you. At a moment in the day when most people are at their most self-focused. Morning is when we're the most internal. We're thinking about our own plans, our own needs, our own schedule. A man who interrupts that natural self-focus to take care of you is a man whose instinct in the quiet of that morning is to provide for you. And that instinct does not come from physical desire. That instinct comes from care. There's an important nuance here too. It's not about whether he's a great cook or whether the coffee is even good. What matters is the gesture, the checking in, the "do you take milk?" asked with actual attention while he's looking at you. Because a man who barely knows you and doesn't plan to rectify that situation does not stand in his kitchen at 8 a.m. wondering how you take your coffee. He just doesn't. He doesn't care enough to wonder. Jade told me about the morning she knew things were different with Nathan. She'd been seeing him for about 3 weeks. The first morning she stayed over, she woke up to the sound of him in the kitchen. She came through expecting to find him making something for himself. Instead, he turned around, held up 2 mugs and said, "I didn't know if you were a tea or coffee person, so I made both." He'd made both. Not because he's a saint, because he was paying attention, because he wanted to get it right, because she mattered enough for him to wonder. The mini insight. A man who feeds you in the morning is a man whose care for you has outlasted the night. Now, this next one might surprise you. This is the one I want you to sit with, because I think this is the morning after behavior that most clearly separates a man who is genuinely falling for you from a man who is simply managing the exit politely. In the morning, over coffee, while you're still in bed, while you're getting dressed, in that slow and slightly lazy window before the real day begins, a man who is emotionally invested starts asking you things. Not surface level things. Not, "So what do you do again?" filler conversation. Real questions. What was your childhood like? Are you close with your family? What do you actually want your life to look like in 5 years? What's the thing you're most proud of that nobody knows about? These questions are not small. They are an act of emotional pursuit. He is not asking because he's trying to fill silence. He is asking because something in him wants to know more, genuinely, urgently more, about who you are. And here's the thing that makes this so significant. A man who sees you as casual does not need that information. He is not building a picture of you. He is not trying to understand you. He has no use for the deeper layers of who you are, so he doesn't go looking for them. But a man who is emotionally attaching, who is beginning to feel something real, suddenly needs more of you. And the morning after is when that need first starts showing up, because the guard is down and the desire to connect is still high. Think about this carefully. When a man asks you a real question in the morning, when he genuinely leans in and listens to your answer and then asks a follow-up question and then another, he is telling you something profound. He is telling you that last night didn't satisfy his curiosity about you. It increased it. That getting closer to you physically made him want to get closer to you emotionally. And that is not the behavior of a man who has checked you into a category and is preparing to move on. I spoke to a woman named Priya who had almost given up on finding someone who truly saw her. She had experienced too many mornings where the conversation was pleasant but empty, polite, two-dimensional, clearly the behavior of a man counting down to a comfortable exit. Then she met Elliot. And the morning after their first night together, they lay in bed for 3 hours talking. He asked her about her parents' divorce and how it had shaped her. He asked about her relationship with her sister. He asked what she believed in, not just religiously, but fundamentally as a person. He was insatiable, not for her body, for her. Priya told me, "I realized halfway through that morning that I had never actually been seen by a man before. Not like that. Not with that kind of hunger to know me. They moved in together 7 months later. Think about that for a second. One morning, 3 hours, real questions. That was the morning everything changed for her. The mini insight. A man who is still asking questions in the morning is a man for whom the night was not the destination. It was the beginning. And if you think that was powerful, wait for this. The goodbye is a moment that most women instinctively know is important, but very few know how to read correctly. Because it's not about the length of the goodbye. It's not about whether it lasts 30 seconds or 5 minutes. It's about the quality of it, the emotional texture of it. A man who is not serious about you treats the goodbye as a logistical event. He picks up his things, he gives you a quick hug or a brief kiss that barely lands. He says something generic like, "Yeah, let's do this again." And then he's out the door before the sentence has finished echoing. That goodbye has a very specific feeling. It feels like a transaction completing, like a form being submitted. There's a kind of efficiency to it that, if you've experienced it, you recognize immediately, and it stings. Even when you can't articulate why, it stings. Now compare that to the goodbye of a man who is emotionally invested. He lingers at the door, not because he's uncertain or awkward, but because leaving doesn't feel quite right to him yet. He'll say goodbye and then find one more thing to say. He'll hug you and hold it a second longer than necessary. He'll pull back and look at you, actually look at you, before he goes. He might say, "I really don't want to leave," or just, "Last night was really good." Not loud, not performed, just real. And crucially, that last look he gives you, the one right before he walks away, that is not a look a man gives to someone he's already finished thinking about. That is the look of a man who is carrying something out the door with him. Something he didn't have when he walked in. Something he's going to be thinking about on the drive home. Caroline described it perfectly. She said the difference between the men who were casual and the man who eventually became her partner was summed up entirely in the goodbye. Every guy before him left like they were escaping, she said. He left like he was being torn away. Like if I'd said, "Stay a bit longer," he would have cancelled everything else he had that day and stayed. That goodbye told me the whole story before I even knew there was a story yet. The mini insight. The man who is hard to say goodbye to is the man who means it when he comes back. Now let's talk about something that happens even before he leaves. This one takes a certain kind of emotional maturity to recognize, because it's not about what he does so much as what he doesn't do. And what he doesn't do is make you feel strange for being there. There is a very particular kind of discomfort that can settle over a morning after when a man is not invested. A subtle distance, a careful politeness that feels more like management than warmth. He's not unkind, but you feel like a guest who has stayed slightly too long. Like the hotel is trying to clean the room and you're still in it. You start apologizing for being in his space. You get dressed quickly. You look for signals about when it's appropriate to leave. You feel, and this is the word I hear most often, awkward. A man who is emotionally attached to you does the opposite of creating that feeling. He actively dismantles it. He creates an environment in which being there the next morning feels not just acceptable, but genuinely good. He doesn't hover anxiously. He doesn't start mentioning his schedule. He pulls you into his morning, his music, his kitchen, his ordinary routine, and he makes you feel like you belong in it, even temporarily, even just for today. This is about emotional safety. A man who cares about you wants you to feel good in his space. He wants the memory you carry away from that morning to be a warm one. Not because he's managing your feelings strategically, but because your experience genuinely matters to him. And protecting the morning, making it soft and easy and free of awkwardness, is one of the most generous things a man can do after intimacy, and one of the least celebrated. Tanya told me she'd had enough bad mornings after that she had started leaving before men woke up, avoiding the whole thing entirely rather than face that horrible managed politeness. Then one morning, she stayed, and the man she was with made the morning so easy, so warm, so completely free of pressure or awkwardness that she stayed for 4 hours just existing in his space. I realized I'd been leaving early to protect myself from feeling unwanted, she said. That morning, I didn't feel unwanted. Not for a second. The mini insight. A man who makes your morning comfortable is a man who wants you to want to come back. And here's one that happens quietly, but means everything. This one can be so small that it slips right by. And that would be a shame, because when it happens, it is one of the most meaningful things a man can offer you in those early hours. Introducing you to his world doesn't mean he's parading you in front of his friends. Not yet. It's much quieter than that. It's him mentioning something real about his life. My brother is coming to visit next weekend. Or, I've been trying to sort out a problem at work and it's been driving me mad. Or, this is the playlist I always put on in the morning. I hope you don't mind. It's him letting you into the texture of his actual daily life. Not the curated date version of his life. The real one. Because here's what you need to understand. When a man keeps his daily life separate from you, when every interaction exists in a kind of bubble, with no connection to his friends, his family, his routines, his problems, that separation is intentional, whether he knows it or not. He's keeping you in a specific compartment. And compartments don't grow. But when a man starts naturally, organically weaving details of his real life into your mornings, when he talks about his mum or complains about his commute or shows you a funny video his friend sent, he is dissolving the boundary between the version of himself he performs on dates and the version of himself he actually is. He is pulling the two worlds together. And he only does that with someone he intends to keep around. There's something else this signals too. When he shares his world with you in the morning, he's also finding out if you're interested in it. He's watching to see if you ask follow-up questions, if you seem curious, if the real version of him, not the charming date night version, is someone you want to know. It's a test of something, a small unspoken invitation. Here is my life. Are you interested in it? Sophie nearly missed this with her partner Daniel. She told me the morning after their second night together, he spent 20 minutes telling her about a difficult situation with a close friend, something he was genuinely wrestling with. She thought at the time, is this strange? Is he oversharing? But she leaned in and listened carefully and asked questions and cared about the outcome. 3 months later, he told her that conversation had been the moment he knew she was different. Most people would have changed the subject, he said. You actually wanted to know. The mini insight? When he gives you a window into his real life, the question is not what it means. It's whether you're willing to look through it. Almost at the end, and this next one is one you need to hear. There is a phrase that has ended more promising connections than almost anything else in modern dating. That phrase is, we should do this again sometime. Sometime. That word is a masterpiece of emotional evasion. It sounds positive. It sounds like an intention. It sounds like the beginning of something, but it's not. It's the verbal equivalent of putting something on a shelf so high, you never have to reach for it. Sometime means nothing. Sometime is the polite way of saying goodbye without having to say it. And here's how you tell the difference between that and a man who genuinely means it. A man who is emotionally invested in you doesn't say sometime. He says Thursday. He says, that restaurant you mentioned, let me make a booking. He says, what does your weekend look like? He converts the vague into the specific because he is not willing to leave the continuation of whatever this is to chance. He is not going to walk out the door and hope the momentum carries forward on its own. He is making sure the next meeting happens. He is treating the next time he sees you as something to be secured, not assumed. This is not about a man being controlling or moving too fast. It's about a man who, standing in your doorway or sitting across from you at the kitchen table, looks at the morning ending and thinks, I don't want this to be the last time. And he does something about it. He makes a plan because he knows that intention without action is just a feeling. And he wants this to be more than a feeling. Pay attention to the energy behind the plan too. A man who is serious about you makes the plan with a kind of quiet confidence. He's not asking permission to see you again. He's not anxious about whether you'll say yes. He's just organizing the next chapter naturally, like it's already been agreed, because in his mind, it has. Naomi described this so vividly. After a night with a man she was beginning to really fall for, she waited that whole morning for some sign, some indication of whether this was the beginning of something or the end of it. He was warm, he was lovely, but she couldn't tell. And then, as he was leaving, standing at the front door, he stopped, turned to her and said, I'm going to a friend's thing Saturday, but Sunday is completely free. I want to cook for you. Can you come for dinner? Not sometime, not we should hang out. Sunday, dinner, come. She said she felt the anxiety drain right out of her. He didn't leave me wondering. He just sorted it. And I knew in that moment that he was the kind of man who does that, who shows up clearly and doesn't leave you guessing. The mini insight. A man with real feelings for you doesn't leave the future open-ended. He closes the gap before he walks out the door. And finally, the one that wraps everything together. You've already heard me talk in a previous video about the power of post-intimacy texts. But this particular version of it, the text that arrives while he's literally still in transit, carries its own unique weight that deserves its own spotlight here.